Greetings, friends and fellow freelancers. Welcome back to another episode of Tabletop Mercenary. Today, I want to address a misconception that a lot of us deal with and explain something that is the bane of every creator's existence out there. First and foremost, I have said this before in other places, but I feel it is important to establish it here. Creators, no matter who they are, no matter what their name is, no matter how big their corporate backing, no matter how many books they've written or how many RPGs they've worked on, we cannot make ourselves successful. Full stop. It does not matter if you write 100 books, if you produce thousands of game supplements, if you make entire YouTube channels of videos, if no one interacts with them, if no one picks them up and reads them, you are that tree that fell in the forest with no one around to see it or hear it. The question is, do you even exist if no one knows about your work? This is important to establish because while it sounds obvious, there are a lot of people out there who have the power dynamics backwards when it comes to this profession. So many people blame artists for their lack of success, for their lack of numbers, when the artist can only make the art. It's perfectly valid to criticize people and say, I don't like your art. I am not interested in your stories. I do not jive with the type of games that you write. That's perfectly fine. But we cannot make those things successful. That power lies with the audience. Only the audience can make a creator successful. We are essentially gladiators in the Colosseum. It does not matter at the end of the fight whether we put on a masterful performance if no one cheers for us. If we don't have fans, then it doesn't matter who we are or what we're trying to do. For that reason, audience support is one of the most important things you can have as a creator, but it is unfortunately one of the most ephemeral aspects of the profession, and it is really hard to nail down for a lot of very confusing reasons. One is that even though we live in the era of social media where we have metrics at our fingertips telling us all of the numbers we could possibly ask for, those don't always yield us predictions that we want. Faulty data will lead to you making faulty assumptions, which leads to unfortunate flops when it comes to things that you make. I will explain what I'm talking about for those who think I'm delving into corporate speak now. But to go all the way back, think about when you were in elementary school and you got that lesson on the Titanic that all of us got, and they explained how icebergs work. Most of us remember this. I'm just going to make up the numbers here because it's easier for my example. But let's say you have an iceberg. You see only 10% of it above the surface. Just a nice round number that I've pulled off the top of my head. 90% of it is below the surface, and that is where it's really dangerous because you can't see it and it extends further than you think. When it comes to audience support, you basically have a reverse iceberg, in that no matter how huge your audience support seems, you have all of these subscribers and all of these interactions and all of these comments every time you put things out there. The actual number of people that subscribe to you, that pay attention, that actually interact with your content, that want to support your work, is tiny. I use a rule of 10. It's not super scientific, but it ballparks what I should expect, and it has helped me deal with disappointment more than once. But in short, if you have an audience, however big that audience seems to be, you should assume that only 1 in 10 of the people in that audience are actually going to see what it is you're posting or making or releasing. And of those who see it, only 1 in 10 of those people will interact with it and support it in some way. And I really wish that I had strategies to make this easier, or that I had words of comfort to say that, this is not correct and that I was being very overgenerous in how negative my view of this was. But the longer I have done this job, the more I have realized that people do not interact with creations in the way that we as creators need them to. And that's not just saying that people aren't throwing money at us all the time, which would be lovely, and I'm sure we would all love that. But herding cats is a term that comes to mind, and when you add in the fact that social media algorithms are growing more and more cash dependent, so that you have to go to absurd lengths to actually get yourself seen, even by your own audience, without shilling out money for it every time, it's basically stepping on a soapbox and trying to yell at the top of your voice, but you're in a wind tunnel and everyone has bigger concerns than what you're doing. Even if they see you, even if they're interested in what it is you're doing, they have to navigate over to where you are and get close enough to hear what it is you're talking about so that they can actually participate in this interaction. As an example for folks who are looking for numbers, I have a couple of trends that I have noticed that I would like to discuss. And again, these are not deeply researched statistics. These are things that I have noticed as a creator and things that I have observed as a person who is a professional in the field. If you are looking for mathematically supported formulas, that is not my area of expertise. That is not my degree. I am just giving advice that I'm trying to keep general. But let's say, for existence, you look over at just a YouTube channel, whether it's a smaller one like the Azukail Games YouTube channel, or whether you're looking at some of the bigger creators who have 1 million, 2 million subscribers. Generally speaking, your subscriber count, that is your avowed audience. These are people who opted in and have said, I like this creator, I would like to see more of their content, I'm going to support them. Even if they're not sending you money, even if they're not buying your merch, these are people who basically tuned in and said, I'm paying attention, I want to see what you make. Of those people, whether you have 1 million followers or whether you have 1,200 followers, like we do on the Azukail Games channel, which you should like and subscribe to if you haven't yet. But when you see new videos drop from those creators, when you compare the view count in that initial first week or so to the total number of subscribers, you end up with something ballparked that I've seen around that 10% number. And sure, that sounds like a lot if you're getting 100,000, 200,000 views per video. But there's that question of, if you have 2 million subscribers, 2 million people have said, we are interested in what you're making, and fewer than 100,000 of them are actually tuning in, that can be very frustrating, especially if you looked at your numbers and said, well, I have 2 million people who said they're going to support me, so I'm going to base my expectations on how well this content is going to do, assuming that all 2 million of them are tuning in. And this is where we get into missteps, because we see this as well on this channel. For example, we have about 1,200 people, last I checked, and that number may have changed by the time this video goes up. But you would think with 1,200 subscribers, 1,200 people who have showed up and said, yes, we want to see more videos from this show, that we would get more than 25 people viewing a new video when it goes up. But that is our average, is 25 to 30 views when a new video goes up in the first day or two. By the end of the first week, we're lucky if we can get it to 100. And that's with social media blasting, that's with Facebook, Reddit, all of those things, getting as much exposure as we can. Barely gets 10%, if that. Sometimes we get lucky and we'll get a signal boost from someone outside who will go to their audience and tell them, hey, we got a shout out in this channel's video, you should all go check it out. Or, you know, as Adrian's crafting videos will have of Crooked Staff Terrain, we'll occasionally see, hey, this guy made a cool thing with a product that we produce, you should all go watch that video, and boost us to their larger audience. But those are things you cannot depend on, and they're outside of the expected norm when you look at your audience count and you try to figure out who's actually supporting you. Now, this is not just a doom and gloom statement that most audience counts are full of dead weight and empty bodies and accounts that aren't paying attention. You know, whether it's friends who just want to help out, so they're holding a seat to make your audience look bigger, or whether they're people who saw 1 or 2 videos and then they kind of forgot about you and life got busy, or it's people whose accounts just kind of faded away and they don't really use them anymore, but they haven't come around and unsubscribed. But turning people from subscribers or members of your audience into active participants in what you're doing is a necessary part of getting a larger, more active community. And I will state this before we start. There will be some people who just refuse to help. They don't want to take responsibility for the effect their actions have on you as a creator. They want to put the entire onus of success on you. If you succeed, it's because you made a cool thing and you did all the work and you got all of the audience interest, rather than because your audience as individuals gassed you up, told their friends about you, and boosted your signal, which, as I mentioned previously, is the actual way that we succeed. Almost no one, I'm saying almost because I'm certain it's happened somewhere and the one example will prove me wrong, but almost no one has ever succeeded in a creative field on their own volition. It has always, always, always been because people helped them out and because people in their audience participated in that process. So, what you need to do is to reach out to your audience and explain to them what you need from them and to make it clear what your call to action is. For those who are watching this and are wondering what I'm talking about, you've probably stopped hearing it at this point, but you'll notice that almost every single video on YouTube ends with a creator asking you to like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, all of those things. We hear it kind of like the exit outro from the PBS shows where they would say the show is made possible by viewers like you. That's not just boilerplate we're reading off. That's us asking you to do something to help us out, because that's what we need to be successful on that platform. On YouTube, the algorithm decides how important you are, partially based on your audience. It also decides how much interaction you're getting based on how many comments you receive, which is why lots of us will work in requests to the audience of, hey, do you have a topic you want to see? Leave it in the comments below and maybe we'll talk about it in the future. Because the more people we get commenting, the more the algorithm sits up and takes notice and goes, oh, people are interacting with this video. I'm going to share it to other people who might be interested. Whereas if we're not getting a lot of views, we don't have a big subscriber count, we're not getting a lot of comments, it just decides we're dead air and does nothing to help support us. So that call to action is very important. It is also important not to overwhelm your audience by asking them to do too many things. For example, if you're making a social media post, like say you're sharing a blog entry or you're sharing a new video or you're sharing a TTRPG supplement that you wrote that just dropped, tell people what it is and then give them one specific thing you want them to do, whether it's go check it out for yourself. So they go and they look at it and they give it a read over and they decide whether or not they want to buy it. Whether it's help me boost this signal, share this around. You know, if you have a video that's free to watch, if you're trying to get more people from your potential audience to come in the door, there's nothing to buy, but asking people to share, to leave a heart react, gives them a very specific thing of, this is what I need you to do, please do this. And if you can get members of your audience used to doing that as part of their normal actions when they see a post of yours, it will eventually become second nature, especially if you explain to them, as I'm trying to explain to everybody watching this video, how important those things are to allowing us to overcome the inertia of the algorithm that does not want to help us unless we give it money. So if you have a creator whose audience you are in, it does not matter if they're a big creator or a small creator. As I mentioned, even those creators with what looks like millions of people subscribing and following them, they probably have only a fraction of that audience genuinely supporting them, and they need as much help as we smaller creators do. Watch videos, share things around, leave comments, put it on your own social media to boost the signal. And even if a social media group looks like it would be huge, it looks like there's so many people here, you're just going to get lost in what's going on. It is important to remember that this 10% rule applies to basically everywhere on the internet. If you go through Reddit and you find groups with 30,000, 40,000, 100,000 so-called members, leave comments for a while. Just once or twice a week, pop in, share something. Some of those groups will have a lot of active members, and your stuff will eventually, get pushed down by new people. A lot of them are full of ghosts, and it'll be you and 2 or 3 other people who are the only ones actively participating. And that is one of those serious reverse icebergs where it looks like you have 60,000 members who are all here to check out what's happening. But at the end of the day, there's maybe 5 or 6 people in one mod who are actually paying attention, and everyone else is a bot, a ghost account, someone who fell off, the edge of the earth and isn't actually doing anything. Your audience is always smaller than you think it is, and it's why you always need to reach out to those you have and explain to them what you need. And I will end this by saying, do not just beg for money all the time. Even if that is accurate to say, if you want to help us, go to Patreon and become a Patreon supporter. That direct assistance is the best way to help us create content. That can be frustrating for people to hear. So change up your message. Let people know. If you have money, leave us a tip on Ko-fi. Become a Patreon patron. If that's too much for you, try some of these other options that are free. And if you are someone who is out there and hears these things, don't just write it off. Don't just assume that someone else is going to help the creators that you like, because that's how people go out of business. That's how people stop making content, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how many people it looks like are in the audience. It matters how many people are in the audience. Because you can host a wrestling match with cardboard cutouts in every seat, but you need that feedback, and you need people to actually be interacting with you. Otherwise, you're in a building in the dark by yourself, and sooner or later, even if you can afford to keep making things like that, a lot of us will get discouraged, because creators don't just make things for ourselves. If we were just doing it for us, we would not go through the rigmarole to get online, to make our content palatable, to reach out to other people. We would just do it in our offices and not bother anyone. We're here because we at least partially want people to see the things we're making. We want them to interact with them. We want them to see our videos, listen to our audio dramas, read our novels, play our games. And for that, we need audience participation. If you have an active audience, even if it seems small, if a few hundred people watched every video that came out on this channel, and all of those people then left comments and shared them on their social medias, we would jump. We would spike as a channel. Huge numbers, because that level of active interaction for someone at our level is a huge deal. Same for if I had a few hundred people who every time I released a tabletop RPG supplement, if every time I released a novel, bought copies, and I could rely on those few hundred fans who really liked what I was doing, my career would be way less rocky than it is now. But I don't have that. I have maybe 2 dozen, 3 dozen people I can really rely on, and a lot of other people that are maybes. Maybe they'll show up and check out this video. Maybe they'll buy a copy of my book. Maybe they'll check out this week's blog entry. Maybe they won't. Maybe they'll comment. Maybe they'll share. Maybe they'll take a little bit to let their friends and family know about it. They'll bring it up in conversation somewhere with someone else who's not in my audience who might be interested. Maybe they won't. And if we could all do our part to be that reliable support for the creators that we love, for the people whose art we want to see keep flowing, for the people that we want to be able to pay their bills and not have to make that decision between, am I going to keep making games? Am I going to keep making art? Am I going to keep making videos? Or am I just going to close up shop and go back to a day job and decide, this just isn't worth the effort? So keep that in mind, whether you're a creator or whether you're just a fan of creators and you like getting art, particularly if you like getting art and games and stories and all of these things for free, because more stuff is available for free now than has ever been available before. But lots of us cannot afford to keep doing it if we don't have anyone out there helping us at the end of the day get seen, get read, get watched, and get paid. So, apologies for being a little all over the place, but this is a topic I'm very invested in and occasionally very frustrated by. So I was trying to really drive home how important it was while also giving useful, actionable information about it for those who are wondering why they're not getting the support they need, or for people who think their support doesn't matter. But if you have any thoughts on this topic, please leave it in the comments down below. If you have any topics you want to see in the future from this channel on this show, let me know and I will read them, respond to them, and do my best to make sure that people get their questions answered. Till next time, this is your Tabletop Mercenary, signing off. First and foremost, thank you for staying to the end of this episode of Tabletop Mercenary. If there's a question you have about being an RPG creator, please don't hesitate to put it in the comments below so I can address it in a future episode. If you want to help me keep the lights on and keep this show going, then please consider subscribing to the channel, liking the video, and giving it a share on your own social media pages to help boost the signal. Lastly, if you really enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a tip by buying me a Ko-fi or becoming a Patreon patron at the links in the video description below. You'll find me on both sites under the name The Literary Mercenary.